All right, cool. It's ready. All right, so going over Medicare for all, do you kind of want to start off with, we didn't really like set super clear parameters. I mean, just a debate on Medicare for all. Do you want to kind of like give your problems with Medicare for all or what you
Yeah.
think?
So I think it's important to establish Amir's position because he wasn't here, right? And that's the position I'm gonna be arguing, right? So um Amir is arguing, right? That essentially the point of his TikTok is that there's a percentage given by the Gallup poll, right? It was, I think, 55, 54 from 2019 to 2020, right? And he's arguing that the current system that majority of Americans want and are currently in, right? He's saying that majority do support it, and the minority, which is 44,
Well,
45.
he's definitely not saying that the majority of people support our current system because the poll that he cited, I believe it was like 61, 62% of Americans say that our current healthcare system is in either a crisis or has like major problems with it.
No, I'm
And so,
just I'm just referring to his poll specifically. I'm not using your source yet, right?
no, that was his poll. We can pull it up right here. Let's see, reduce number.
I have the source myself. Let me see what it says.
But his poll was saying that the majority of people do have a problem with our current healthcare system. He was just saying that. Well, you can keep going.
Hold on. I don't want to straw man his argument or anything. So 45% says major problems, right? So 61% say that. So 60. You're arguing saying that 61% have major problems. Is that what his poll said, right?
Yes, I believe that was the poll that he brought up. Said I believe 61, 62% of Americans say that our healthcare system has like major problems with it.
Right, and I think the argument he was making is that the 61%, like there are many nuanced positions of it, correct?
Yes, I would completely agree that there are many nuanced positions. Some people might think that it should be a fully privatized system. I think that there are very few people that think that, but those people could fall into that.
Right. So I think, and like obviously the 38, then obviously the 38 to 39% would be for retaining the system, right?
I think so. Yeah, they would. Yeah, I guess with the people that think maybe it has a few problems, but not major problems, because I think the phrasing of the question is major problems.
So my argument, I think now we're transitioning to my argument here. Okay, so majority of healthcare providers, most healthcare is provided by corporations or by the employer, right? Roughly, I'll send the sources. Provided by Kaiser Health, right? You want me to link both of them? I have three sources.
There's a private chat. You can put it in there if you want.
Okay, command 3.
But what argument are you trying to make? I understand that
the argument I'm trying to make, right, is that majority of Americans, they may poll and say that they don't like the current system, 61, 62%, but they are currently under the employer-based system, right? Majority of Americans are in a privatized system. So my argument here is that if you shift the 64, 65% that are in the employer system, it's gonna be a radical change, and there might be serious economic repercussions.
So your argument is not. So you're not making an argument as to what's more popular. You're saying as to what would be better, right? You're saying Medicare for all would not be a good system, or are you trying to argue the popularity of it? Because I think that those are two different.
No, I'm not. Yeah. So what I'm arguing is that I think the popularity argument is just going to be a back and forth based on one source says another, because I know sources have innate biases, right? They're going to find something that's going to prove their argument, right? And both sides are going to be extremely biased, right? I think it's better to argue. I think the parameters for this debate is which system is going to be better, or which system is, better for America in the future.
Awesome. I would much rather argue that as well, because like you said, public opinion can change. Honestly, even if the majority of people want something, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing. So I'd be happy to debate what system, you think is better. So go on with what you're saying. So because you think the majority of people are under some sort of employer-based healthcare system, you think that would not be a good thing to put them on Medicare for all, like
because the majority are currently under that system, right? And there are a lot of benefits to that system, right? Privatization.
What do you think some of the benefits are to that?
Right. So the benefits, some of them are like, for example, if there are incidents at work, right? The public sector really can't tackle that because it usually has this very broad sense of healthcare coverage, right? It's not very specific, right? For example, if I injure my leg or specific ligament in my body, right? The company's liable contractually to provide healthcare coverage to me, right? Because that's what happens when I enter employment from the company. when you go into the public healthcare system, right, there is a very broad coverage, and sometimes it's either very expansive, right, which there's two types of
government care are you talking about? Medicaid, Medicare? Are you talking about just the VA?
No,
I mean,
I'm just talking about
none of those systems are as all-encompassing as Medicare for All is. Medicare for all non-elected procedures would be covered.
Right. So I was just talking in federal and publicly funded healthcare in general, right? So Medicare for all, right? So the expansiveness of it, right? The thing is that when you have, it's going to be a provided source. So there are for example, you cannot have access to private physicians because some of them will not take.
Well, it depends which plan you're talking about. I believe Bernie's plan allows for people to still, go to some sort of private.
Again, right. So when you seek, so for example, in a Medicare for all system under Bernie's plan, right? Technically, when you're in that private system, right, some of them will completely, as how the free market, at least how the American market works, the physician can deny somebody who is under that Medicare for all plan, right?
No, Medicare for all. People wouldn't be able to deny Medicare for all. That's the thing. Everybody would have Medicare for all.
So you're arguing for the abolishment of the private system entirely?
That is exactly what Medicare for all is the abolishment of private healthcare.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Private health insurance. I should definitely.
Okay.
Everybody would be covered under Medicare for all.
Okay. Now I understand. Okay. So because I was wondering, do you want, because there's two types, right? Because you can have a Hong Kong type of system where the both public and private healthcare markets exist simultaneously, and the private market usually determines the price of healthcare in the first place, which is something that I advocate for. Or you can have something that you want that's like sort of the Nordic version of it, where we have all healthcare, where we have Medicare. Is that what you're arguing?
It's a little bit misleading. Even Hong Kong system is some variants of universal healthcare. We're the only developed nation in the entire world that doesn't have some form of universal healthcare. Now, universal healthcare is a little bit of an umbrella. Some countries do it differently, but we're the only country that doesn't provide universal.
No. With the Hong Kong, they have a very unique system. I've talked to many people that are native from Hong Kong. How
they have a unique system, but they do still have universal coverage.
So how their system generally works, right, is that they have two systems, right? The private market essentially determines the price of the healthcare, right? And the public government provided healthcare responds to demands of the private market, essentially making sure that their prices are a lot lower so they can cover basic necessities, right? So if you have a general injury that can be required, for example, a checkup, or you're feeling sick, right? The Hong Kong system, essentially, what happens, you can see that general checkup. But if you have very specialized disease where you have to see a physician, right, that is specialized in that specific type of injury, you'd go see a private hospital. You go to a private hospital so they can specialize.
Private hospital or private doctors would still exist under Medicare for all. It just eliminates private insurance.
Yeah. So the argument I'm making, right, is that if you do that, right, the specialization would simply go away because now there's no demand for that job.
Wait. Why would demand go away? People would still have the requirements of whatever specialty you're referring to. How would the demand go away?
Okay, the demand would go away is because essentially
the demand would not go. People would still need that healthcare.
No. The thing is, specialization would simply go away because more likely, because the market for general healthcare coverage, right, it's going to be expanded under public health insurance, right?
Wait. When you say the demand would go away, you're talking about people that demand that healthcare, that need that healthcare.
Yeah, no, there's undoubtedly, right? When you switch from a private system to a completely public system, right, there's going to be a greater demand for general healthcare needs instead of specialized healthcare needs. We can agree.
People still have things that they need specialization for. I mean, I don't understand. Like, there are people that have like very specific needs for their healthcare. I have no idea why that would go away.
The thing is, the market,
they don't need those, or what are you saying?
No, what I'm saying right now is that if the private market, if private health insurance is covered away, because private insurance ensures that there's specific type of healthcare coverages that are covered that are very, very specific, right? For example, no one has, like, I can tell you, like, for a fact, no one's gonna have like butterflies. The disease where your skin turns into, like, it's scaly, and it's like, I think it's some sort of butterfly disease, right? There's specific type of healthcare, specific types of skin diseases, right, that aren't usually covered under a all expansive healthcare plan because there's not enough specific coverage that's provided for it, right?
Medicare for all covers all non-elective procedures, so it would cover that. Well, you're basically making the argument for Medicare for all because I would imagine
Absolutely.
most private healthcare plans probably don't cover butterfly disease. If you're saying it's like such a super like specific disease, Medicare for all would cover all non-elective healthcare procedures.
Okay, but it would be okay. You have to understand the government would lose in that sense because now, in that sense, right? They're now they're spending money on a disease that covers only 0.01% of people, right? It's just simply it's simply cost ineffective, right? It doesn't make sense for a publicly funded system to cover something that's 0.01%. In general, I know you're advocating for a reality where we can have a system that's all expensive, but simply for that specific disease where there's almost virtually no cure, right? It's very hard to allocate resources when it's such a minute percent of the population actually have the disease, right? In reality, people that have general checkups, general needs, right, are going to be fully covered under your expansive system, right? And that's what a lot of doctors are going to go into when they go into medical school, right? The coverage.
You're not telling me why it won't be covered, other than saying it's like a minute thing. But that's the thing, though. Medicare for all covers all things that are non-elected, and so as long as that's still a thing that people have, it would be covered under Medicare for all. That's the thing. Is like your insurance provider just pays for the healthcare. Like
again, no. Okay, when people go into the hospital, right? There's specific. We can both agree that when you're going to a hospital, they have to give you a diagnosis, right? And if the hospital does not have the equipment to provide the proper diagnosis, right? They have to go to another hospital that more or less specializes in whatever that's. But
that would still exist under Medicare for all. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand.
It would be extremely expensive for someone to do that, though, right?
It's already pretty expensive.
Okay, but under under a majority, under that 33% public system, it's very expensive for the government. I'm
aware that it's expensive, but that doesn't change whether it's private or public. When you're going to have
what I'm saying, what I'm arguing, right, is that government has a finite amount of monetary resources that they can allocate towards healthcare. We don't have an infinite amount of money, right? In general, right? What I'm saying, if such a minute population has a specific disease, right? For example, a lot of the times, right? If somebody from a specific country needs to come into the United States to have specific healthcare coverage, right? It doesn't make sense for us to have 500 to. It doesn't make sense for us to have 50,000 physicians specialized in that disease because there's such a minute population of it. When you have a privatized healthcare system that provides specific private healthcare coverage for that specific disease, right? There's more people who wants to enter the market, right? Because now you're also allocating.
Yeah, there's not more people that want to enter the market. The demand is inelastic for what you're describing for a super rare disease like that. That is like probably one of the most inelastic demands that you can have. Either people have it or they don't. The demand does not change whether or not we have Medicare for all or a completely private system or some hybrid system. The demand doesn't change.
No, the demand absolutely does change because.
Wait, how are you defining demand?
Okay, demand let me look at the actual resource. I don't want to strong man, but demand.
The demand would be the need for help. Like, are you saying that if we had like Medicare for all, people would stop getting that disease or something?
No. What I'm saying is that
the demand wouldn't change.
Less doctors will be willing to get to that.
I would say then that the supply would change, not the demand. The supply you're trying to say that the supply of care would change.
No, supply demanded. Supply demanded. That's what I'm arguing. Supply demanded.
No, but the demand would stay exactly the same. Healthcare is an inelastic. People have an inelastic.
Healthcare is not. No, healthcare is okay. Are you arguing that every single person has the same exact demand for healthcare?
No, that's not what inelastic demand means.
I am aware, but that's what the argument that I think you're applying.
No, I'm saying that the amount of people that need healthcare that does not change whether or not whether you have cancer or you're not is not determined by if we have single payer healthcare. You just have it. If you have butterfly disease, it's not because we have Medicare for all or because we don't have Medicare.
No. What I'm saying is that there's less people willing to do research for the butterfly disease if everybody's going to be willingly paid the same because butterfly.
There'll be less research going into that. The majority of research for pharmaceuticals and stuff. I mean, a lot of that comes from research done in the public sector.
I'm aware, and then no. What I'm saying is that if there's specialization, right? When it comes to wages, right? doctors who have specializations in specific diseases, right, they tend to get paid higher than those who are general physicians, right? I'm just saying that if we go to a public healthcare system, right, there's going to be an increase in the amount of doctors who are general physicians in the first place, right? So
I think we need more doctors. That's a good thing.
No, but you have to understand like the amount of debt that someone has to go through to go to medical school.
You have to understand the amount. Hey, I completely support public funded tuition for people going into med school.
But that's almost $450,000 worth of medical.
I'm aware, and we still need doctors. That's something that we very much need in this country.
Again, but then you're taking away from people who want to run their own privately owned, doctor offices, right? Because
wait, I keep saying private hospitals and doctors still exist under Medicare for all.
I am aware, but
why do you keep saying that then?
No, I know what I'm saying is that I think what you're saying is that you think you think like I'm advocating for a completely privatized system, which I'm not, right?
I don't think that you're doing that, but I also don't think that you keep saying that the private specialists would go away. They wouldn't. I don't know how.
The trend generally, right? As we go towards a more public healthcare system, which we have since the 80s and 90s, there has been an increase in Medicare and Medicaid funding.
I think that Medicare and Medicaid were incepted. The inception of Medicare was in the 60s, wasn't it?
The 60s?
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying there was a huge spike in demand in the 80s. Especially it peaked at during Clinton's era.
A spike in the demand for healthcare.
It's expansive funding for Medicare and Medicaid and stuff like that. Publicly funded healthcare in the 90s. That's why Bill Clinton had had a large amount of economic growth. Because
I'm pretty sure we pay more for healthcare today.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Up on that. That's not what I'm arguing for. I'm definitely not arguing for what we had in the 80s.
No. Yeah, what I'm saying is that since then, right. The now doctors more or less they get funded by their wages are a mix of Medicare funding, Medicaid funding, and a bit of the salary that the hospital pays them, that the public hospital pays them, right? The combination of the two, right, that decreases their wages. If you look at the trend, right, the wages of doctors has not been the same. It's been slowly decreasing, right? And the decrease for specialization, it has sort of decreased as well, right? So I'm arguing for, right, is that the specialization, right, even though you can argue that it's inelastic, right, it's slowly going away because, again, doctors need to have interest in it, right? So if X amount of doctors, right, are specialized in treating a certain disease, are interested in treating a certain disease, right, they have two paths they can go to. They can either go to the general physician fund, which is there's going to be a lot more job opportunity under a more privatized system, right, or a more publicly health system, right? They can have a better job opportunity and get a pretty sizable wage, right? And again, we can argue that like when it comes to specialization, it takes an extended amount of years to do research on it, right? An average doctor goes to medical
research, though, is usually, I mean, a lot of the bulk of this research for medical healthcare stuff comes from the public sector.
Yeah, but you have to, as a doctor, you have to do special stuff like fellowships, right? That you need to do special types of research in order to be board certified.
I don't want to get hung up on this point. I don't know how else to say that. Like, there would still be private specialized doctors under Medicare for all. But I'm just saying specialized disease for just a little bit. You brought up people that their healthcare is provided by their employer. I think recently, since the pandemic began, 14 million Americans have lost their healthcare because they were let go, they lost their job, they lost their healthcare. Under Medicare for all, that wouldn't happen. I mean, what do you think of that? By having healthcare tied to employment, I mean, frankly, if you didn't have healthcare tied to employment, workers could bargain for better wages. So because of that, if people lose their job, they lose their healthcare. It doesn't seem very good.
No. Okay, so I mean, the pandemic is something that we've virtually never seen in history, right?
We've definitely had pandemics before.
No, not to this scale where people are losing jobs left and right. I mean, not since like the Great Depression.
The government response. Go on with what you're saying.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that a lot of people, you're right. A lot of people lost their jobs. No. Wait, what did you say?
Oh, well, you brought up the pandemic, people losing their jobs. I mean, 2008, we also had a mass wave of unemployment because people lost their jobs.
Right.
People also
Yeah, but healthcare coverage has increased since 2008. Publicly funded healthcare. has increased since 2008.
Yeah, thanks to the Affordable Care Act, but I mean,
yes. Okay, so here goes to my another point, right? Obviously because of the COVID-19, right, a lot of people lost employment, so that means they lost their employment coverage, right? So right, so that 68%, I don't think it's reliable. If you took it towards the end of the year right now, it'd be a lot lower. It wouldn't be at 68%. I'm pretty sure it'd be around 48, 49%, right? Because a lot of people did lose their jobs, right? It's going to be a significant dip, right? My argument here is that since the government response to the COVID-19 was so ineffective under Trump, right, a publicly funded system, right, and his response was so ineffective as as leader of the country, I argue is that if we increase publicly funded a Medicare for all system, you'd have another catastrophe like this one, right? Because we're under 68% right now, right?
Under 68%, what? What are you trying to say?
What I'm saying is that that if when it comes to stuff like this, right, the government response to the COVID pandemic was so bad. We have ambulances, like publicly funded ambulances in hospitals, right? They're getting backed up because they can't treat COVID patients properly, because they're so built up with COVID patients, and they can't treat other emergencies properly, right? That shows a failure of our healthcare system, right? If they're getting backed up, where there's like 5 or 6 ambulances that are denying people, like let's say someone gets in a car accident, but the hospital is filled with COVID patients, right?
But it seems like we want to expand healthcare for people. We want to expand the amount of people that are covered by health insurance. That way, there would be more people.
Okay, the people waiting for the waiting and getting denied by ambulances that can't pick them up. They have coverage in the hospital. It's just the hospital's filled.
Well, I don't think that a Medicare for all system would have we wouldn't have had any problems from coronavirus, but I do think that it would have.
No, but the hospitals have.
There are other things that we also could have done. I think that we could have more expansive, moratorium on evictions. I think that we could have done a lot of different things. We could have, but regardless, I'm not saying that Medicare for all would have solved everything, but you could have had things like if people didn't have to worry about if they were going to debt to go get see if they have COVID. Maybe more people would have went. That would have been more effective.
Yeah, but I think what I'm trying to say. Right. I think the bulk of the argument the point that I was making is that if you look at what is happening right now, right, people that are being denied to be able to go to the hospital are not they weren't denied coverage, right? They can afford it. It's just the hospitals have a limited capacity, right? You can allocate as much resource.
The point that you're making though doesn't change with the privatized system or whatever hybrid system you're referring. Like the point that I think that it does not change with whatever system
no, because you're advocating for the elimination of the private system, right?
I'm advocating for the elimination of private healthcare or private health insurance.
Yes, and in general, the private sector would gain much more profit from a private system because now they have simply a monopoly. Not a monopoly, but they have increased or guaranteed profit from the private insurance company. For example, if there's a contractual agreement.
There's a ton of places. That's the thing. They didn't know the pandemic was going to come. Why would a private insurance company want to be ready for a pandemic? But
when in the private sector, you're obviously aware of calculated risk, right?
We have one of the most expansive private involvement in our healthcare system than many other countries, and we have some of the worst response to COVID of any other country.
Yeah, but we also lead in a lot of medical categories. For example, we're almost number 2 and number 3 in cancer care. We're almost
wait. There's a few specific cancers that people like to bring up when they say that we have better health outcomes. Overall, we have much worse health outcomes when it comes to just the effects of our healthcare system. Yes, I will acknowledge that there are a few more specific healthcare or cancers that we do better on. That is far from the.
No, I think that's indicative that we're better at specialization than we are at general public coverage, and I think that's a good thing, right? Because the reason why. Go ahead. Am I going to make the point, or are you going to make the point?
No, go on.
Okay, the reason why I'm saying that specialization is important is because generally people that are most health prone are older and they need specialization for their specific diseases, right? When you get older, you don't know what disease you get because your body starts deteriorating in some way, shape, or form, right? A lot of health.
Most seniors are using Medicare though.
Okay, but they need to. But it's a combination of private and public healthcare system though. They have both public and private health insurance. For example, if they need general checkups, they're going to use the public option when it gets, because they can afford both, right? And also, seniors in general have the highest amount of income out of anyone in the American population. So of course they can afford both a public and private option. So
go on.
That's why what I'm saying is that in general, right? Seniors, it'd be a lot more effective for them to utilize a public healthcare system, right, where they can go in for general checkups, because it's going to be a lot more effective than having that stable that specific cost that a private healthcare system would have, right? So they would generally take that public system because it's a lot more cost effective, right? But when it comes to specializations, right, it's going to be, it's going to be very, very difficult or very, very expensive to find a very, very specialized doctor in a publicly funded or healthcare system.
Here's the problem, though. If you need a specialized type of treatment, it shouldn't be dependent on like if you can afford that specialized treatment. Like you should just be able to get it. That's the thing. Yeah, if it's privatized, then only wealthy people can get that specialized treatment. What good is it if you have this like super specialized private system, but only really wealthy people can use that? Like if you get butterflies disease but you're poor, it doesn't matter if we have the best specialists in the world. You don't get it.
No, okay, but in general, right? People.
What do you mean? Wait. What do you mean in general? That's what I'm saying.
No. Okay, so why
we pay more per capita for healthcare than any other country in the world?
Okay, I agree, and that's why I believe we should decrease in every way, shape, or form, because I think it's ineffective, right? Because when it comes to stuff like specific diseases, like the butterflies disease I was bringing up earlier, right? A hospital's not going to go in and say, okay, we're not going to even try to fix you. You're just going to be denied coverage in any way, shape, or form, right? They try to do this. I mean, as I have family that are in the medical field, right? They generally they try to handle the disease as best as possible, right? The outcome becomes the cost afterwards, right?
So someone can go bankrupt. I should have clarified. So a poor person, maybe they can get some treatment for the butterfly disease, but they go bankrupt. So maybe that's this changes the argument a little bit, right? Because no, it still makes it a terrible system.
No, it doesn't make it I don't think it makes it a terrible system.
If someone goes bankrupt just because they happen to get butterfly disease, you don't think that that's a bad system? Medical bankruptcies don't exist in the rest of the developed world.
No. In a privatized system, for example, I would say like the way it works in Hong Kong, where you would get a treatment for a privatized disease, right? There are specific specializations, there's specific hospitals that are dedicated to that type of treatment, right? And
do they do it for free?
Absolutely not. There's the cost. That's a problem. No, it's not absolutely free. The cost is extremely, extremely low, right? Because the private market is the one that determines the price of the healthcare.
No, wait. You're saying that the treatment for this super highly specialized disease that 0.003% of people get, you're saying that the cost of that is so low that even someone that's poor can afford that?
Well, I mean, in general, when you're
if the cost is so low, then why can't it be covered by Medicare for all?
No. Okay, so
it would be covered by Medicare for all.
The issue is dependency, right? When you have a government system that essentially where it covers everything, right? You cannot you can't, like, for example, if you have that specific disease, right? They start making payments towards it, right? And in general, I think when you're poor, right, it teaches you sort of responsibility, right?
The fact that you might go bankrupt if you get a rare disease teaches you responsibility?
No, yes, I do. I actually do believe.
Why do you need to learn responsibility? You don't choose to get this rare disease. You don't choose to get cancer. Why do you need to have responsibility?
No, it essentially what it does, it teaches people that in general, like they make payments towards it, right? And these payments are very incremental. It's usually there's some sort of negotiation process that goes on between the private health provider and your and the hospital, right? They have sizable payments so that they can make sure that's affordable, right? And that constant care can be provided, right? Under a public healthcare, under a Medicare for all system, right? There are so many people that are covered, right? You can't have enough physicians.
Everybody would be covered.
Yeah.
Wait, that's not true though. There are nations that have universal healthcare that have like the NHS is completely. I mean, that's government run healthcare. Everybody has coverage. They did it.
Yeah, but again, the NHS is
more doctors per capita than we do.
No, NHS. Also, the NHS is also the reason why Britain is under a huge financial crisis right now, right?
Wait. We pay more per capita though. We pay more per capita than Britain does. Our system is more expensive.
Yeah, but we have more people. That's why we pay more.
Well, no. That's what per capita means though.
Okay, fair enough. I'll concede to that. But okay, in general, right? I think we also, when it comes to here's what I will also say too. The government also provides private subsidies towards private hospitals, which I also disagree with. Right?
Well, you say the government provides? You mean like they subsidize?
Yeah, they subsidize private generally how it works is that in Great Britain they have no way, shape, or form. They don't subsidize the private market in any way, shape, or form, right? In the United States, they do, right? That's a huge difference between the two systems, right? The NHS has almost no involvement with private healthcare in Britain. In the UK, in the United States, there is some overlap between the two, right? So in general, right, that's why I think when it comes to just its per capita per function, right? If you look at private healthcare insurance, right, if you look at specific, not subsidized, right, private healthcare insurance, there is a lot more effective outcome because there are specific physicians that can tackle the disease effectively, right?
No, but when that's not available to everyone, though, it becomes a lot less valuable.
Again, you're making a moral argument, though. The moral argument.
It's also an outcome argument because we have worse outcomes in terms of healthcare. So I think that it isn't just a moral argument. I do think that moral is involved with this, but I think it's also just an overall efficiency of your healthcare system. When the care isn't available to everyone, you can have the best doctor in the world, but say he charges $1 billion per treatment. That doesn't do anything. Obviously, that's a very extreme example, but you get what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, right? But again, America's a meritocracy system, right? The more you earn of something, right?
No, we are not a meritocracy.
We are absolutely a meritocracy. What's your argument against that?
Wait. We have lower levels of economic mobility than like most of the European countries, I believe.
I need a source on that. I need a source.
I'll look it up. Economic mobility by country. Go on with what you're saying.
Yeah. So in general, right? I actually do want to see the source, right? I think over wages, right? The wages have increased in the United States, I think, since the 90s by almost 20 to 30%, right? It went from, I think, 19,000 to almost 30,000, right? I'm gonna have to check a source on that, right?
Let's see. I just sent you the source, by the way. We are 27th in terms of social and economic mobility.
Okay. Let me look at the poll real quickly.
According to this, the source is visualcapitalist.com.
Okay, Spain. Again, I'm. All these countries are Nordic countries. So
no, they're not all Nordic countries. Wait a second, they are not all Nordic countries.
Most of them are in Europe. Majority of them are in Europe.
Wait, but you said that we're a meritocracy, though.
Yes, we are.
We are not a meritocracy. Wait, Japan, not a Nordic country. Malta, not a Nordic country.
No, I clarified. I said majority. I said majority are European-based countries.
I mean, yeah, I frankly think European countries have government healthcare, though.
No, but if you look at these same countries, like I'll give you a source on this too. These countries have the highest amount of economic and privatized freedom as well, right? They have many options available to them. For example, if you look at Singapore is ahead of us. Singapore has a very similar system to Hong Kong, where there are various options, public and private options that are available to people.
Singapore, though, does have, they have like a basically public healthcare. Like the government is very involved with the Singapore system.
Yeah, but
if you like Singapore, you must have loved Obamacare, because Singapore is the individual mandate. It's almost, I don't know if
the individual mandate. Okay, so the argument I'm making for Singapore is that Singapore in general didn't have a forced Medicare for all system. They drove it down. They drove the price down eventually. Almost everybody. Again, there's I think when it comes to Medicare for all, there's a difference between Medicare for all and universal healthcare, right? Universal healthcare means everybody has it for a price, right? Medicare for all means
it just means that everybody's covered. There's nobody that's underinsured.
Yeah, essentially, right?
For a price, though, because most of these countries don't do it for a price.
No, Singapore does it for a price. I know for a fact Singapore does.
Singapore does. Singapore has a very technocratic thing. They have much less care for like civil liberties and stuff in Singapore. They basically require people that a certain amount of their money goes towards these certain things. Like a certain amount of money has to go to like their.
It's a but I
voluntary.
No, it is voluntary, right? It's a voluntary.
It's basically an individual mandate, like where they're required to have health.
In order to work for a specific country or a corporations, right? You need to have some sort of healthcare coverage, right? So they give you various options. So it's not individually mandated, right? Because you have this in order to work for a country, right? This voluntary exchange. In order to work for a country, you must have some sort of healthcare coverage, or else you can't work, right? And that's certainly the case for Singapore, right? If you don't have some sort of healthcare coverage, they will deny you employment, right? And so what I'm saying is that under that system, right, the Medicare for all system, I'm giving you the example of Singapore. I can provide a lot more because I've done a good amount of research on this.
Wait, I would like to really fast though. I would like to just hammer in this. The U.S. is not a meritocracy, like by any like reasonable definition.
Okay, we can argue that. Why would you say it's not?
I don't think that the product of where people are, for the most part, is largely where someone ends up in life is largely the product of where they started out in the U.S. That's just a fact. Like,
so for example, if you look at NFL football players, right?
Obviously NFL examples, but that's not true for everybody. I mean, what is it like a 1/1,000,000th of football players end up in the NFL?
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously, the outcome, right? That somebody, it's an investment that someone makes, right? Time is an investment, right? When when someone puts on a helmet, when someone puts on the pads, right? It's an investment that someone makes, right? It's a risk that someone takes when you are going on to a specific career, right? For example, everybody that decides to major in pre-med in college, they're not determined to be doctors, right? There's also a certain percentage of people that don't end up being doctors in the first place because they failed the MCAT. Specific things happen in life, financial burden, right? Stuff like that.
You're kind of labeling. You're saying like outside things happen. Those outside things are what would make it not a meritocracy. Meritocracy would mean that like the outcome of where people are is purely a product of how hard they work.
No, meritocracy
would mean.
No. Okay, I don't think you're being generous to the term meritocracy. It's simply because no matter how hard you work for something, right? There's some attainable outcome that you're working towards, right? Of course, it's not going to be guaranteed, right? That's not where meritocracy is, right? You're not that's something that would be guaranteed under like what communism is. Like if your labor is substantially very valuable, right? They means you're guaranteed a certain outcome, right? And that's certainly what not the U.S. is, and in communism is certainly, we can't argue, is a meritocracy, right?
I am not a communist. I am not arguing for communism right now. I'm saying that
I'm just saying
remotely close to a meritocracy.
No, I'm just making that analogy, right? It's pretty analogous, right? Because that's what the labor theorem value is, right? Your labor is intrinsically valuable, so you should be compensated for some sort of for some sort of outcome, right? That's what essentially the labor theorem value is, right? And I don't think that's analogous to what a meritocracy is, right? Because you're not guaranteed.
What a meritocracy means is that the makeup of society, the hierarchy of society, is the product of people's abilities, how hard that they work.
Yes,
that's not true.
No, it is absolutely true, right? Because
then why are people that are born poor disproportionately likely to die poor? Why are people born rich disproportionately likely to die
then why in the world of first-gen immigrants have far greater incomes than their parents?
Well, frankly, our immigration system definitely leans more towards people that are better economically enabled.
Okay, but that's not. That's absolutely not. So you're saying first-gen immigrants that come into the United States?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was just thinking immigrants. Okay, you said first-generation immigrants. Why
first-generation immigrants, right? They, the parents come, the children come. Why in the world are children of the first-generation immigrants have higher incomes than their parents if we're not American?
Is what you're saying then that the people who immigrated here, that they didn't work very hard? Is like that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying the children. I'm saying the parents, right? They put substantial amount of time and effort, right? The investment, that time that parents put into working hard, right? Their income may be exactly the same over the course of their life. That may not change, but their children's income is going to be vastly affected, usually for the better, right? When they put that time and effort in, right? For example, my parents worked at 7-Eleven for the entire life, right? I'm obviously, because of them, I'm a first-generation immigrant. I'm obviously going to be guaranteed a higher income than they are, right?
You're not sort of a higher income, and you are. I would say that if somebody starts off and they're more poor, they are probably more. It's going to be harder for them. It's going to be harder for them to go to school, for example. So you tell me, if someone is born with rich parents and their parents can afford to just pay for their college, that person is on an equal playing field as someone who's born with poor parents, and they have to take out a significant amount of debt to go to college.
Okay, I didn't take out a significant amount of debt to go. Again, anecdotal evidence is not indicative of a good argument. I'll acknowledge that, right? What I'm saying is that it's not, again, it depends what kind of playing field we have, right? Public or private, right? This is public schooling, right? If everybody goes to the same public school, right? In general, the playing field might be a little bit more evened out, right? In a private system, if both of them go to a private system, it's evened out. If one's at a public and private, obviously the income's going to be, the outcome's going to be very much different, right? what I'm saying is that if both of them are on the same playing field, the rich person, the poor person, right? There's going to be some sort of competitiveness between the two people, right? For example, the person who, I had one of the lowest incomes of my class, right? I qualified for a lot of special needs scholarships, right? The people that had higher income than I did, right? And I was not and that were not first generation immigrants that had very wealthy parents, right? And this is true for a lot of kids, right? They performed a lot lower than I did. If you look at programs such as QuestBridge, right, that are private systems, right, they make sure that these impoverished kids do have a chance to succeed, and they have some sort of equal playing field, right?
It's not an equal playing field. I'm sorry, it is not an equal playing field. The idea that you born to immigrant parents have an equal playing field to the Walton kids who were born billionaires is insane.
But look at scholarships, right? Scholarships are given to scholarships tend to favor people.
You get a full ride. You're still not at the same level as the Walton kids. You can work as hard. There's a good chance that both of us will work as hard as we can our entire life. We are probably not going to be billionaires. Just likely was. Maybe we will. Who knows? Maybe we will be. The Walton kids they will have a higher wealth than we do. That means it's not a meritocracy by definition.
No, but it's a chance that everybody takes by participating in working, right? There's that simple chance that everybody
taking a chance by working doesn't make something a meritocracy.
Again, that's completely nihilistic, though, right? You're saying that like
no. The word meritocracy has a definition. It means that the hierarchy of society is the product of how hard people have worked. That someone at the top, they're the person that's worked the hardest. Someone at the bottom, they're the person that hasn't worked at all. That's obviously not the case.
Okay, I'm gonna actually Okay, so by definition, right? I'm looking at it, right? A government or holding of power by selected on the basis of their ability, right? If you have a certain right. So are you arguing that essentially that
arguing that the Walton kids probably when they were born to be billionaires, they will probably end up being billionaires at the end of their life? I think that is not the product of how hard they worked.
Again, ability is not determined by your wealth, though, right? There are a lot of poor people.
I know ability is not determined by your wealth. That's what makes it not a meritocracy.
No. Okay, poor people. Okay, people that are generally wealthy, right? They do have, in general, calculate. There's that percentage-wise, right? They can, right? But there are a lot of poor people. Generally, how erratic a free market works, right? And I guess that's investment that everybody takes in a free market system, right? Is that they have the potential to fail, right? Their percentage of fail may be small, right? But again, it's that random risk that everybody takes, right?
That's why part of economic mobility is like what you're saying. Like I get what you're saying, but just when you look at the numbers, that's not how it ends up. For the most part, people like basically stay where they are in terms of economic it is. Now that doesn't mean there aren't anecdotal examples of people who are born poor end up really rich, people who are born rich end up really poor. But for the most part, when you look at the data, we have lower economic mobility than most of it, or not most of the countries, but many other developed countries.
We're pretty much in the top 5%. I mean, that's not bad. We're in the top 5%.
No. I think that it's pretty insane to compare us to like other countries, like non-developed countries. Like I mean
come on, we're better than like Latvia, Russia.
We're number 27th. We're not in
again, Poland. Would you say Poland again? Poland is definitely as developed as we are, right? Would you say like they're not also a meritocracy?
I do not think that Poland is a meritocracy. No.
Why not?
Considering the fact that in Poland has lower economic mobility than we do, then that would imply that
their system is much more public than ours.
I'm not saying that something being more public makes things a meritocracy.
I'm arguing it does. I'm arguing that if you're gonna say right, so what is the means in which you're going to alleviate the inequality?
What you want to do is you want to give people an equality of opportunity. As ideally what you want. You want everyone to have an equal opportunity.
I agree.
Exactly. And I think that one of the countries that does the best job of giving everyone an equal opportunity in life is Denmark. And it just so happens that Denmark has one of the highest economic mobilities in the entire world.
Again,
they have universal health care. They have excellent preschool. Like everybody has access to preschool and it's quality. Everybody has access to college. Everybody can go to college.
Again, Denmark had a serious financial crisis in the past few years where they can't even afford a lot of
we had a serious financial crisis in the past few years.
Again, but theirs was worse than ours, right?
Whoa,
the prime minister of Denmark.
The rest of the world were largely the product of what happened in our system. Like the other countries, their economies are so like interwoven with our financial markets that the 2008 financial crisis had a ripple effect across the rest of the world.
Yeah, but that's not why Denmark is in the reason why it's in the financial crisis, because they can't afford a lot of those government funded systems, right? For example,
wait, that is not why Denmark is Denmark's not in a financial crisis. Frankly, they're handling the pandemic better than we are.
No, it's not because of the pandemic. They were in a financial crisis prior to the coronavirus, right? The prime minister. The prime minister of Denmark, right? He came out at the Harvard Business School and was clarifying the reason why they're in a financial crisis, and he said himself that it was because of their government funded programs, that they can't afford all of it, right? Because the government funded programs, right, they have a lot of social, right, they have success in the short term, but in the long term it costs them almost a lot of their financial it costs a lot of their a good amount for their public sector, right? Government spending, right, was so high in Denmark, right? It's causing them serious problems, right? Denmark in the past, right, was a seriously privatized system in the 40s and 30s, right? Extremely privatized system, right? That's why they were able to build so much capital and so much investment. There's so many private sectors in Denmark, right? Now, and that's fueling why the reason why they can afford so many things right now, right? But when they burn through all those investments made in the private investment in the private sector, right? What ends up happening is you create a financial crisis that they're going through right now.
I want to see this. I want to see the source for this massive financial crisis that Denmark was going through because of their spending. Denmark's economy was doing fantastic prior to the pandemic.
Again, I said it was prior to the pandemic, but let me give you a source. I think it was on YouTube.
No, that's what I'm saying. Prior to the pandemic, Denmark's economy was doing fantastic.
Hold on. Prime Minister Denmark. Prime Minister.
Are you talking about when the guy said that they're not socialists? Is that what you're talking about?
Wait, what are you saying?
Are you referencing when that guy from Denmark said that they're not socialists?
Yes.
That had nothing to. That was just him saying that they're not socialists, and they're not socialists.
Yeah, but in general, they have a higher amount of government spending. They're just in general, right? They have extreme high amounts of government spending than a lot of their competitors, right? They have higher government spending than Sweden, than Sweden, than Iceland, the Netherlands. That's generally true, right? In comparison to the United States, we have such a intrinsic.
I can't find this thing that you're talking about where they had this like massive financial crisis.
Again, hold on.
It looked like they had one in 2009, which seems to be pretty clearly a ripple of what happened in the U.S.
Mark crisis. I was reading on this. Again, the economy. Again, it's sort of an up and down system, right? Hold on.
Well, our system is also an up and down system, though.
Hold on. Okay, 2009, 2010. Again, prior to, I'll send the link. Okay. So, and prior to the system, right? It certainly didn't return to what it was in 2006, right? It never reached that type of financial success since then. I gave you a source, by the way.
Let's see. Keep going.
Right. So what I'm saying is that again, Denmark's system is not something that this recent contemporary thing where they just magically, because of extended healthcare, extended government spending, that they magically are an efficient economy now. It was years and years.
The source you sent me isn't about their economy. This is just their healthcare spending.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right?
It's been trending down.
Yes, which is a good thing.
The Denmark system is cheaper than ours per capita. That's been my claim.
Again, what I would say is that I think also
Denmark is more of a meritocracy than we are, and even they aren't a meritocracy, but they're more of one than we are.
Okay, so again, it's hard to argue when you have like multiple sources back and forth. But
Oh, yeah, for sure.
yeah. So because it kind of interrupts my train of thought. But I would say that no, I would say Denmark. I'd say it's equally as a meritocracy as the United States because
what metric are you using to say that?
What
metric are you using to say that they're equally a meritocracy?
Economic freedom, right? So let me. Are you aware of the?
Wait. Why does economic freedom mean that they're more of a meritocracy? Remember, we know what the definition of meritocracy is. Why does that make them more?
It provides an equal because it provides a metric of economic opportunity, equality of economic opportunity, essentially, right? So you can invest in the
economic freedom does not mean they have economic opportunity equality. That doesn't mean that. That just means less regulations.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Oh, but wait. But here's the thing, though. I agree. It seems like a lot of countries have less regulations than we do because our system works really weird because we have local government, state government, federal government, and sometimes there's compounding regulations.
They're not how Denmark works is that they're a constitutional monarchy, right? A lot of these Nordic countries are constitutional monarchies, right? Which is a lot more effective than a representative democracy that we have right now, right? Because there's a lot.
Denmark also has a representative government. The king doesn't rule things in Denmark.
No, but are you aware of what the definition of constitutional monarchy is? It's
not off the top of my head, but they don't have some sort of authoritarian.
No. Okay, constitutional monarchy is not the king determining things. It's simply just a representative government where you have a parliament, and for example, and then you have similar to what we have, except there's Denmark also has a lot of chambers, a lot of parties that are within the system. So there's obviously a lot of more discourse within the Danish government than in the United States. It's not.
You know what they also don't have? They don't have the same system of lobbying that we do here in the U.S.
I 100% agree. I am 100% against lobbying in any way, shape, or form, right? And I think because of the fact that the private market, the private health care insurance, right, since they have no competition, right, there's only 2 or 3 major companies, right, that are simply monopolizing the entire healthcare system, right? And there's no competition between the two, right? My argument here is that we need more private healthcare companies to compete against those big pharmaceuticals, right? So they can drive the prices up.
The thing with that though is if we're talking about health insurance specifically, there's a massive amount of economies of scale of being a larger health insurance company. So I think that it would be very difficult to have an effective private market with that because a larger company is just going to have an inherent advantage when it comes to healthcare. Just because you're probably that's just the way that healthcare works. Or I'm sorry, health insurance that's the way health insurance works. Because you want the larger your pool of people, that's works better for health insurance. Which is why Medicare for all makes sense because then we're all putting into the same pool.
I think it goes back to my other argument, right? How do you provide, right? For example, when we do ratios, right? We have one under a Medicare for all system, right? You're going to be increasing the amount of ratio of physician per person, right? Under a privatized system, it'd be a small ratio, right? So they can provide more intrinsic and privatized and specialized care, right?
Wait, doctors per person does not mean more specialization.
It absolutely does. What do you mean it doesn't?
Well, why do you think that? Wait. All right, let's use practical numbers. So let's say there's you have a country with 100 people, and you have only 10 doctors, and then versus a country that has 100 people but they have 20 doctors. If the country with 20 doctors, they would have more people that could go and do specialized stuff. And then, maybe you have 10 doctors that are just for general care, and then the other 10 do specialized stuff. But then the country that only has 10 doctors, well, they don't have 10 doctors do general, and then the rest do specialized care. All of them have to do general.
Okay, so the difference is the amount of wages that these doctors would have, though, right? It's not exactly the same, right? So your argument would only work is that every doctor is the same. Wait, what?
Why did you bring up doctors per capita?
Because wouldn't that make any sense? Wouldn't that make sense though? It's
more doctors per capita would be a good thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's a good. Yeah, I'm not arguing against that.
But you said a private system would have less doctors per capita.
Okay. I need to clarify my argument, right? So in general, right, when you're taking care of 4 patients, right, it's a lot easier to take care of 4 people than it's to take care of 10 people, right? That's just that's just common sense. So why in the world would that discredit my argument?
No, that's what I'm saying though. But with a Medicare for all system, you arguably, especially I think that right now we have a cap on the number of doctors that can graduate. I don't know why we have that. It's like I honestly I don't know the exact specifics of that, but we have some sort of cap on that kind of thing. I don't think that we should have that.
I think that's determined by
I see no reason to think though that the number of doctors would decrease with the Medicare for all system.
Okay,
but when you can look at countries that do have some form of universal healthcare, they have more doctors per capita than we do.
Again, let's compare the wages between the two doctors. I don't have a source on that, right? But I'll try to provide one if I can find one, right? The wages of doctors with countries which have universal healthcare is generally a lot lower than the ones here in the United States. Doctors most of them do make up the 1% of the United States at least.
I'd be interested to know if that's like median wages or mean wages, because I know that it depends on if you're looking at mean wages. I think that we do have some doctors here that make a pretty massive amount of money. I think that doctors that are working on the more like lower end of care, I don't think that they're making as good of wages as they should be.
Again, they would still make up they would generally be middle higher class, right? A doctor is not going to be, in general, in the medical field, it's a very in order to pay off your debt, right? Right. The reason why people go into medical field in the first place is to pay off the massive debt that they're going to have, right? So at the lowest end, they're middle to high, middle to high care of the economic hierarchy, right? In general, but if you look at a lot of countries where there is universal healthcare, right? Doctors can be in the middle percent, they can be lower middle percent. For example, I was looking at, I know India is trending towards a universal healthcare system, right? Their doctors are basically paid nothing. It's not because of the private system before, because they've tried to subsidize their market for a long time, the Medicare market, right? And their doctors get paid virtually nothing, right?
I don't know enough about India's system, but frankly, I don't think that it's anything that I would try and claim.
But it's indicative of something, right? Because they're trying to move towards a universal healthcare system, right? If you look at just first world countries as a means of retrospective data, right? You have to acknowledge, right, the amount of economic spending that they did in the past, right? For example, why in the world can Sweden afford a lot of these lucrative publicly funded or government expenses, right? It's because in the past they've never lost a war, and they've never participated in a lot of big wars that happen all across the globe, right? They virtually, when it comes to a lot of economic,
if the argument though is that a country is better able to handle like some sort of government healthcare plan if they've been successful in foreign policy, I think that pretty handily applies to the United States.
Yes, I think that's certainly the argument I'm making though. So what I'm saying is that you can a lot of the investment that you can say that goes into the market in general, right? The United States in general has an extremely interventionist foreign policy, right? Where we go around here and there, right? And we basically take over XYZ country for the sake of perpetuating democracy, right? And in general, that's a huge portion of our income, of our, I guess, our federal budget that goes that basically that cripples any social mobility in the general, right? For example, if we're investing more in our foreign policy and interventionist, it's impossible for private markets to grow. Reason being is that a good amount of the population is not going to be there. Majority of military funded healthcare is from the public market.
There's a lot to unpack there. One, I am a massive opponent to our foreign policy abroad, so I think we probably agree on that. I don't know if that's necessarily to the detriment of the private system. I think that there are many ways where we can see the private system benefiting from that. But regardless, though, I think that we can definitely take away from how much we spend on the military, maybe put it towards some sort of government healthcare system. That's what I'd like to see. I don't really understand your argument. Like, I think that we should stop doing stuff internationally, like with what we're doing, like in the Middle East.
I think the argument I'm making is that I think it's pretty important, right? Military spending when it comes to healthcare, right, is very much public. It's virtually almost public, right? There's no employer-based military healthcare, right? All of it, especially under Trump. Trump massively increased Medicare coverage, Medicaid coverage, healthcare coverage for military vets, right? It's a massive increase, right? Did the quality of health increase for veterans? Not really, It's almost virtually insignificant. The amount of and the amount of the quality of healthcare that increased. I know Trump would obviously would go on and said that the quality increase. It did not, right?
I don't think that you can just throw money at a system and it'll get better. I think that we both agree with that. There has to be some rhyme or reason to like where you're increasing the funding. But I think that with the military, basically they have full coverage, don't they? I mean, they're pretty expansive healthcare coverage.
No, a lot of military do get denied coverage all the time, right?
We should have Medicare for all so they don't get denied coverage, huh?
No, because what happens in that system is because military, when you have the cost of infantry and stuff like that, it's a massive per soldier, right? There's so much investment the public has to invest in a soldier in order for them to go off in war, right? They need to be covered some way.
Let's see, because I think we're both against the war. I think we're both against all the wars. We don't think that the U.S. should be doing. I don't think that really has that much of an effect on our arguments regarding healthcare. I think we're getting a little bit like let's just wrap it up, or not wrap it up necessarily, but
let's go back into what we're arguing
on, like Medicare for all specifically, or just like what system do you want to see?
Okay, so I don't think I've made the Hong Kong argument very much already, right? So in general, I want to see a system where privatized healthcare can fully invest, right? Private research, private healthcare can fully invest in the specialization, right? Simply because of the fact that it works. It works in Hong Kong. It worked in Singapore. It worked in a lot of Asian countries, right? And in general, right, this is the trend that a lot of countries need to go under, right? When you say the detriment of the United States, right, specialization, when it comes to specific diseases, it's not a bad thing. I understand in general populace that it may seem, right,
I don't think specialization is a bad thing. I think the bad thing is when poor people can't afford that specialization.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that under a similar system like Hong Kong, right, where the private market is essentially determining the price of goods, right? The public and private market under Hong Kong, they're actively competing with one another, right? If the private market says one thing, the public sector is going to make sure that their prices are lower so more people can buy their coverage, right? And in general, it gets politicians in Hong Kong when they existed, obviously. It gets them elected very much, right? And with more people participating. And in general, if you look at Hong Kong's system, right, there's more people per capita participating in the public healthcare system in Hong Kong when they existed, of course, than they did in the United States because of how low it was, right? General checkups is generally the biggest need amongst people in Hong Kong. But then obviously when you only cater for stuff like general healthcare, right? What you're ignoring is a specific segment of the population that needs that specialization, that in the first place, that even if you blatantly throw money at a small portion, right, you're making a very risky investment into a small portion of the population that needs a specialized healthcare treatment that would be better tackled by the private market.
See, I think that just ends up being the crux of our disagreement. Is I don't think that you will see specialization go away if we had a Medicare for all system. I don't know. I know you're saying that you don't think it would go away necessarily, but you think it would trend down. Like that's really the argument. Is you're saying you would trend away from people specializing in certain things.
Yeah,
that's basically what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I disagree that would happen. I would need to see more evidence of that being the case. And like I said, I think it is a bit of a problem, even if you do have these specialized systems, where if people can't have access to them, I think that does you start to question the validity of the system.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like there are a lot of specific hospitals. Like if you look at St. Jude's, right? St. Jude's is pretty much it takes no government investment. It is nothing, right? It's a Christian-based private hospital organization, right? They have all across the United States, and they're very, very effective when it comes to child healthcare coverage, child healthcare needs, right? They purely rely on donations, right? It's almost unfathomable how they're able to operate in the first place, but they operate very, very effectively, right? They have sponsorships from the NFL, the sponsorships from the NBA, college football sponsorships all over the place, and they openly make donations to St. Jude's, right? I know it's not one case all scenario, right? But I think they're very much a good example of why private healthcare, private insurance, private hospitalization, purely through donations, right? Just purely on donations, right? It can be very effective.
Well, I think that's more of a, I think that there are people that, I don't think that you can rely purely on charity, people donating the things. I don't think that that's going to,
Yeah, but
it
in
doesn't,
general,
it doesn't solve the problem. There's
I
still
think
many people uninsured.
mhm.
It's just, you go.
No, you kind of broke off, and I didn't hear the entirety of your argument.
Oh, I just think that I think that St. Jude's does some really cool stuff, but I don't think that we can rely on that system overall because one, I think it's a little shaky if you rely on a system that's purely funded by donations. I think that becomes a bit of a problem. What if people aren't donating as much? And I don't think that while St. Jude's does some really amazing things, I think that it's not expanding to the entire country. There are still many holes that are left because of our system. And I think that you can find individual cases of private companies doing things, but I think that doesn't really answer the larger. You have to think of the whole country with these kind of things.
Okay, so what I would say in my turn, I keep on reiterating the same things again. My bad. I keep on saying the same here was what I say yeah, because I just came back from something. But what I'm saying is that I think you're making a very pessimistic argument, a very cynical argument, saying that Americans in general have no intrinsic need or grasp of the needy or the poor, right? And I would argue
that's not what I'm saying at all.
But I mean, that's what you're implying, right? Are you saying that people in America just don't care about poor people?
No, but I think that our system disproportionately hurts poor people.
Okay, but if you look at,
I don't think it's individuals hating poor people. I think that our system just disproportionately disadvantages poor people.
Yeah,
it's this.
I think the crux of what we disagree is that I think that government is the reason why the poor, the inequality between poor people, I think exists. And I think that if you look at stuff that a lot of,
I think that there's inequality that existed far before what we consider modern day government.
I mean, I would cite this. I know this is unrelated to what we're talking about, but if you look at the Wisconsin study, right, that I think I'll have it somewhere. But if you look at the labor market participation amongst poor people, amongst people of color, if you look at between 1910 to 1920, right, before massive government entities came in, like the FDA, a lot of big government agencies came in. The labor market participation between a lot of the people and generally the poverty rates between the people, they were almost exactly the same as rich white people, right? Just on participation in the market, just on equality of our outcomes, because government was just lax, and we generally were more of a meritocracy in the 1910s and 1920s. But what I'm saying is that charity in general, if you look at the Salvation Army, St. Jude's, the one organization in California that they donated massive. They basically did a good part in solving the housing crisis in the San Francisco area. A lot of them, right? These are publicly funded. I think it shows that American people in general have an intrinsic need. Not intrinsic need, I'd say general interest on helping poor people. It's just that there are, I think we can both argue that there are certain government regulations that are in place that people cannot effectively donate to charity.
I don't think that that's the case. Also, I think that the economic policies of the 1920s, I think that they led to a bit of a unsustainable system, or not. The 1929, there seemed to be some problems that arose from what we were doing in the 1920s. That's when we had the Great Depression. And so I think it's important to.
I think there's a little bit of disagreement there, because a lot of people blame Calvin Coolidge, where he had almost a virtually very much privatized system.
I don't think it's just his fault, but his hands-off approach definitely hurt things.
No, I would say it's Woodrow. I'd say Woodrow Wilson, and a lot of his predecessors that had big government spending plans is what led to the Great Depression. It doesn't make sense that people have freedom of opportunity to do whatever they want. That's the reason why people collapse, right? Because if you're going to make that argument, right, that people in general cannot be trusted to make their own decisions, right? Then why not just go into a fully government control system if people cannot be responsible for their own decisions?
I think that there are obviously instances where you need regulations. I think that that's why we need regulations against people scamming one another. You have to have rules against fraud and everything. I think that there are very obvious instances where you can see that a system without regulation would just fall apart.
Okay, why would you say that? I listen. I'm not a full-on I'm not a narco-capitalist. So I'm advocating for anarchy, right? What I'm saying is that I believe that there are when somebody violates someone else's property rights and others' liberties, that's when I believe we can have some sort of court case that can be in place. For example, I can't shoot you in the leg and say, look, that's my economic profit. There we go, right? But what I'm saying is that in general, voluntary transactions between two people that are capable and conscious of thinking of what they're getting into, I think that's
a huge issue right there, is that not everybody has perfect information. Not everybody knows exactly what they're getting into. You have things like predatory lending. You have people that make agreements to say buy a car that they think looks good on the outside, but really the car doesn't work on the inside. I think that there are many instances where you can see that it might be voluntary, but there's just sometimes there are massive power disparities. I think that's not as simple as just two people have to agree to something.
I would argue in general, when these corporations, when they do predatory lending, right? What I would say is that in general, like there are a lot of means to curb against predatory lending, right? There are review sites that make sure that if there are certain if you see instances of something, if they have bad reviews in general, right, people are going to be more aware that this particular organization, right?
See, that's kind of the problem with that argument in general, is that that implies that for you to know that this car company sells cars that have bad brakes, that means a bunch of people have to die in car crashes because their car didn't have good brakes. Versus if you just have a regulation. You wouldn't know that until somebody goes through that experience. Right? There's no way you can know. Like for example, if a corporation starting out the way it is, right? We don't know how it's going to look, right? For example, if we have regulations that say, hey, you can't sell bad cars, then there are measures in place to stop a company from doing that. Versus if you just leave it up to the free market, then people have to experience.
Again, corporations have ways to dodge against certain regulations. For example, you can't. Again, we agree there, right?
Yeah, we're both against lobbying, and I think that's a good spot to end it off.
So for example,
lobbying.
Yeah, for example, you can't install a faulty brake, right? But they're going to install a certain type of they're probably going to get the same brake from a certain manufacturer, right? And that's my argument against big government in general, right? Government cannot calculate every single scam, every single problem that a corporation might do to curb the consumer. Right?
I'm definitely not arguing for a command economy or some sort of authoritarian government. I'm just saying that regulations on the market are definitely necessary.
Right? But here's the problem, though. We cannot virtually predict every single problem, every single idea that a consumer that a producer may trick the consumer. There's no way we could do that, right? That's what I'm saying, is that I think consumers need to be a lot more knowledgeable when it comes to certain things. For example, Carfax. Carfax, for example, I think they have years and years of people doing investigative journalism, right? And into discovering how faulty a lot of the cars are. For example, some of the cars getting into a lot of car accidents. They had previous records of car accidents, right? Government didn't step in, right? Ironically, it was media coverage and a lot of people that did individual reports that, thank goodness, a lot of people didn't die from him, but a lot of people had to virtually come up and they had to, tell people, right, you shouldn't trust Carfax because of their certain predatory practice. And that's the power of individualism, right? The power of individualism here is that when people take the initiative to do something without the government telling them what to do, I think people become, in general, as a group, more knowledgeable about something.
I don't think that just because you have regulations like safety regulations, I don't think that necessarily inhibits people's ability to become more knowledgeable about things. But I think that's pretty good. I hope you have a really good Christmas.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed debating you. I'm sorry Amir couldn't be here, and I know you wanted to debate him really bad. I know I'm a lot.
I haven't given up hope. I still want to, but I'm glad we got the chance.
Yeah, I'm a lot smaller creator than he is. Me and him are really good.
Don't worry, that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I understand, because I know you're a little disappointed when Amir didn't want to debate you directly, right? Because I feel like you're it wouldn't give you as much I guess attention towards debate.
So I like debating. I like trying to talk to people about different policies. It has nothing to do with how many followers. Don't worry. I'm really glad that we could do this, and I hope we do it again.
Oh, okay, absolutely. I think we did come on a common ground for a lot of things. It's a good thing that we're both against lobbying, right?
I think a lot of people are. Honestly, I think a lot of people are against lobbying. Next time we should do a debate on maybe overall, because I feel like what we were getting into at the end there was really interesting. Kind of government regulation and maybe the involvement of that. I'm sure we have different disagreements on taxes and stuff. Maybe we could set something up regarding that.
Yeah, definitely. Would you consider, what's your political? Do you have a particular like political affiliation or no?
I'm registered as a Democrat. I call myself like a progressive leftist. Some people I probably fall into like social democrat. Like I have some like post-capitalist things that I support, but for the most part,
Yeah. So
progressive.
yeah, very much. Yeah, you're a post. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I consider myself. I wouldn't consider myself. I consider myself a radical capitalist. That's what I am, essentially.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's a so if you philosophically, I'm a rational egoist, right? So I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't know what that is. I don't think it's like
I definitely don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah. So basically, I'm a very much individualist type of person, right? I'm not like yeah. So in general, I believe that a state is here to ensure individual rights and liberties. But in general, but I think people should be left to their own devices. So I think that's important when we want to debate next time, right? Like that, what our stance is, right? I'm not an anarcho-capitalist. I'm not like like a full-on like I'm not a Republican.
Some of those anarcho-capitalist debates are hard. Those are when you're not dealing with.
ANCAPs are very, very good debaters. They are. They bring out a lot of philosophy.
I meant hard as in it's hard to listen to some of the things that they say.
No, because they argue particularly on pure philosophy, right? If you don't understand like what their philosophical argument is, right? Because they read a lot, right? I don't read as much as they did, but I do a good amount of reading. They read a lot into philosophy, right? I'm not smart enough to participate in a debate with them, right? Because in general, I need to read a little bit more into what they're saying before I can start debating.
I think I can handle them. I think that most of their stuff is just based purely in theory and not in the real world.
I believe that when it comes to political discussion, I do believe there should be some practicality in what's being discussed, right? You can't argue pure philosophy at the end of the day, right? There needs to be some concrete mathematical evidence or some sort of economic practicality of what they're saying, right? If you argue particularly on philosophy and morals all day, right, there wouldn't be much of a discussion because you can't implement moralities and philosophy into public law, right? It just doesn't make sense, right? No. So I'm excited. I'm happy we had this debate. I haven't debated somebody in a while, so I appreciate talking to you. I hope you appreciate the debate that we had together.
No, I loved it, man. It was really awesome, and I can't wait till we do the next one. All right. You have a very, very good Christmas. Okay.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Bye.